It takes a great deal of courage to believe in to stand alone, even if you believe in something very strongly. This quote from Reginald Rose, the original writer of the teleplay that was adapted for the movie we're going to study today, is very relevant of what I'm going to address in this video, which is about 12 Angry Men by Sidney Lumet. Sidney Lumet was a movie director. I will tell you about him in a minute. And this video fits in the theme of debating, okay? Debating about art, okay? Or the different debates art create. It makes us wonder, to what extent can we say that art is representative of ongoing debates on a specific society? So first things first, we're going to talk about the movie itself and its director. So the director is called Sidney Lumet. He was born on the 25th of June 1924, in Philadelphia, and he died in New York in 2011 on April the 9th. Okay, so he grew up in New York City with two parents that were both actors. Okay, so they were veterans of the Yiddish art theater. So he followed in their footsteps. That means that he followed their example, okay, and made his acting debut on Broadway in 1935. Okay, it was in Kingsley's Dead Hand. His film debut were in One Third of a Nation, another movie, a bit later. So in 1950, he became assistant director at CBS, okay, a very famous TV channel. In 1957, a bit later, he decided to adapt 12 Angry Men, which was already existing as a television play. So the fact that he worked at CBS might have influenced his choice. And it was his first feature film as a director. So the movie is originally a TV production written by Reginald Rose that I quoted at the beginning of this video, okay, in 1954. Then it was adapted for a play, in 1955. So 1954 television play, 1955 a play, I mean in a proper theater, and then in 1957 the movie was released. Adapted for something, by the way. So it centers on the jury deliberations, okay, in a murder trial. The person on trial is an immigrant, and it's important to mention this, and the 12 men have to unanimously agree on what, on the sentence, that should apply to this murder, okay? So this 18-year-old boy, they have to decide whether he deserves, the electric chair or not. So it was nominated for an Academy Award, and this movie was granted an Oscar nod, okay, an Oscar recognition for Best Director, okay, rewarding Sidney Lumet then. So the genre is a teleplay, and this teleplay became a courtroom classic. A courtroom is where trials happen. So, as I'm used to saying, it's important to make your own opinion about the movie and its stakes, ses enjeux, okay? So it's important to make your own opinion, but there are admissible characteristics that I'm trying to address now, okay? You cannot consider this movie without considering the context of the time. America in the 1950s. We are 5 years after the Second World War, and it's the very beginning of the Cold War between the United States and USSR. So this leads to, let's say, doubts about different people and the fear of betrayal. So they don't want to be betrayed, and they are trying to chase communists in the society. This is what we call McCarthyism in the 1950s. So, and a definition could be accusing with proper regard for evidence, okay? So they are trying to look for evidence justifying the fact of accusing people of doing things. And it speaks volumes about the movie, because it should be the duty of a jury member to do so. It was when the House of Un-American Activities Committee was created, and the Rosenbergs were executed in 1953. So it's also the moment of the civil rights movement that you might have studied in middle school and or maybe in high school. And 2 years later, or almost 2 years before the Montgomery bus boycott, no, 1 year before it, sorry, when the teleplay was released. So more and more was broadcast, should I say. So more and more white-collar workers, okay, growing economy, white-collar workers, les cols blancs is a reference that you know in history. Development of the American way of life, because it's also the period of the great migrations and people are moving to the suburbs, okay? They can afford bigger houses and more devices to help doing their daily chores, especially women, because women were stay at home at that time. So it's also important to consider all this, because people who stay in the cities are crammed together like sardines almost, because there was no room for so many people coming. Some people came to help after the war. Others emigrated because they needed to. It was a vital escape, and there is no room for so many people there. So between 1945, sorry, and 1960, we notice a growing number of inhabitants from 114 million to 160 million. Okay, so another characteristic of this movie is justice on lockdown. You all know what lockdown means now after the 2 years of COVID, but there are here cinematic choices consisting in putting the 12 jury members in this deliberation room from the beginning of the movie to the very end. Of course, try being locked in a place for several hours, and you will see that it influences your state of mind, the way you feel, the way you think, and probably what you say. Okay, so unnamed characters, though given an identity, it's also a really subtle characteristic that it's important to keep in mind. None of them have a name, but all of them have an identity. Each of them, should I say, have an identity. So it has an identity, and it's important to keep it in mind. Okay, so naming versus calling names is an interesting aspect of the novel, because some of them are really saying things that could be very pejorative about immigrants. And justice versus judgment. Where is the middle line? Where is the fine line between justice and judgment? Here, talking about judgment, which is almost a religious reference, we could refer to the poster, life in their hands, death on their minds. Here, the top of the poster reminds of the Last Supper of Jesus, a very famous painting. And the only character that is standing is Henry Fonda, okay, the main character of the novel, the movie, sorry. So, a short analysis of stills, not moving, images that do not move. Okay, so the panoramic view of the beginning and doubled with the low angle shot is showing a blurred immigrant, so who doesn't really count in this society, that we could easily erase from the image. It's very symbolical. And it corresponds to, and it might correspond to, the idea, the preconceived idea that most of the jury members have about him. Okay, they are represented with this low angle shot, and low angle shot is usually used to idolize people, to show how much important they are. So they are way more important than him. Here, another panoramic view, this time doubled with a high angle shot, shows the 12 jury members trying to cope with stress the way they can. Okay, they are standing in different places. It shows how hot it's inside in this room. It's reinforced by the use of the lights, and all of them are sweating. We can feel they don't wear their jackets anymore, and it's interesting to consider this as well. Here it's a two-shot. Okay, that means that we can see the two characters at the same time, and the idea is to compare them Okay, so here we have someone, I would say that both of them don't feel comfortable for different reasons. Okay, him because he, as we say, you know, we shouldn't judge a book by its cover, so he doesn't really represent what he really is, and here because he's full of preconceived ideas about immigrants and really wants to leave. Here, a close-up showing Henry Fonda with a dagger that we saw in the poster as well, and he is about to show a demonstration. It's interesting because he has exactly the same dagger, showing that it's the beginning of the consumer society, so anyone could afford anything. So it's really representative of this society of the time. Here, the close-up on this other very important character, most of the time angry in the movie, and it's interesting to see him at the very end of his tether. Okay, he doesn't feel well at all. Okay, he feels exhausted and he doesn't feel well at all. So it's interesting to address this. And here, the final unnamed characters, when the unnamed characters actually introduce themselves and are given a name again, life goes back to normal, and it's interesting to keep it in mind. Okay, so this is the very last scene of the movie. So, as usual, we finish on a few references that you could include on a portfolio about 12 Angry Men. First of all, let's start with the end. Okay, 12 Angry Men, why not women? So, there is a feminist equivalent that is 12 Angry Women, a production in the USA. But most of the time now, when the play is played, it's called 12 Angry Jurors, okay, actually showing some sort of a mixed jury, actually. So here, a reference to a movie that you might have studied in première because it's related to one of the classics. It's To Kill a Mockingbird, showing Atticus Finch facing a jury of rural fashion, let's say that, because you can see they don't wear suits. We are in the countryside, obviously. So this painting for Norman Rockwell is also very interesting. The Jury, it's called, and it shows the only woman in the jury room trying to be, or about to be, fooled or trying to be convinced or brainwashed by her counterparts. And here, the Stanford prison experiment is also very interesting too, and it's about an experiment where they put people in a prison cell for a while, obviously people who were not meant to be prisoners, but just to experiment the effect of lockdown on people, which is also a characteristic of the novel. So, of the movie, sorry. So, I hope that my remarks were helpful and relevant to you. It's always interesting to watch a movie and to try and analyze things and see beyond the images. It's a very short one. Don't hesitate to watch it several times, and until it's a wrap. See you next time.